There we are. Welcome back to the Think Bigger Real Estate Show. I'm your host, Justin Stoddard. You guys, I want you to think about this concept here for just a minute before I introduce today's guest. Is charisma something you're only born with, or can you learn it? We all know that those who have more charisma sell more, attract more, get more followers. Today, we're going to go deep on how you can learn charisma. Before I introduce today's guest, let me remind you that inside of the Think Bigger Real Estate group on Facebook, we go deep on these topics. So don't be sitting on the outside. Only listen to the podcast when you can be engaging with the guests of the show. Thrilled today to have McCall Jones, former childhood movie star, now turned charisma hacker. You might be like, what in the heck is a charisma hacker? It's someone who teaches you how to have charisma. McCall, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so pumped about this. I think this is going to be awesome.
It's such a pleasure. We've been on a journey together. McCall and I share I guess you'd say a mentor or a coach in common.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been watching her rise, and I'm like, part of me is like, I want to be like McCall. Like, and I'm confident that after this episode, we're all gonna be like, yeah, I think we all want to be a little bit like McCall.
You're so nice.
Now, McCall, your story wasn't always rosy, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to go into deep detail, but I know that it sounds pretty cool. The fact that you kind of shared a stage with Zac Efron in High School Musical 2, that you shared the stage singing with Donny Osmond. Like, there's some pretty cool things that you've done in a short period of time, yet behind the scenes, it was a little less glamorous, wasn't it?
Yeah. So charisma hacking really stemmed from me asking myself one question at a very, very young age. And the question was, do I have control over an audience? And to everybody in the outside, they're like, you were a psycho little kid if you were really asking yourself that question. But from the time I was 8 years old, I was a child performer. And, like you said, it's so much fun to be on stage, to have, constant validation from tens of thousands of people. But anytime I would mess up even a little bit, terrible things would happen. I was in a professional world at a really young age. They were paying me a lot of money. And if I didn't do well, the event planners could be fired. At home, my dad wouldn't speak to me for days at a time if I messed up because I had embarrassed him in front of his friends. Like, there were so many different aspects that really took the stakes and they raised them through the roof, even more than, will 20,000 people laugh at me or something like that. It was a really deep, emotional, crazy thing. And I was always looking for ways that I could gauge what was going to happen, because the stress led to me blacking out on stage. I would go on stage and I couldn't remember what happened. I couldn't remember if I messed up, and it would basically give me panic attacks because I would get off stage and have to wait until I got home and kind of fake my way through, people complimenting me and things, and wait for the consequences until I got home. So the first thing that I started to do is I started to read people, and I started to, see if they felt sorry for me or if they were genuinely complimenting me. And if they, were excited for me, then I knew it was going to be okay. But if they kind of reassured me or, had the look of pity in their eyes, I knew that I was in for the worst. All of this changed. Like you said, I was on the program with Donny Osmond, and I sat backstage. The long story short, I'll make the very long story very short, but I sat backstage and I observed Donny have complete control over this audience. And they weren't just cheering for him, they were really interacting with him. And I became very envious. And I had never seen an audience react the way that I watched them react with Donny. And I knew if I could have that reaction, that all my problems would go away, that, these event planners would be so thrilled, that my parents would just be through the roof. So I started to create a checklist of just the things that he was doing. I fully planned on stealing every single one of his secrets when I went on stage, as a 9-year-old. And when I went on stage, I did. And it was the first time, that I hadn't blacked out on stage. I was just worried about, what is he doing with his hands? What is he doing with his face? Who is he pointing at? Who is he winking at? And I just went through very, very small details. And then I got off stage and I stopped looking for pity in people's eyes. I created this checklist, and all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute. I could do this again. And with every single performer that I'm on the program with, I can also create a checklist of why people like them. And then people can like me because I'm doing the same things. And this checklist thing became really a way of life for me. I started to do it. I was the go-to singer on the motivational speaking circuit when I was a little girl. And I would look at speakers and salesmen and all these different people, and I would create these checklists of, what audiences reacted to and what they didn't. And I would really just break it down in my mind. And it was this crazy thing. the first, obviously that first part of that not rosy past of all that anxiety, it really kind of went away with those checklists until when I was 21, I was cast in this reality show. And when I went to be cast, they basically told me I had the role, but I need to do this interview beforehand. And when I showed up to the interview, they hated me. They had this idea of who they wanted for this role. And it was basically the mean girl that you see in every reality show. And they thought, hey, this blonde girl with this music, she's going to be that role for us. And I could not have been more different than what they wanted. And I was 40 pounds heavier than they wanted. And, they really liked my music. So they told me, if you can change basically every single thing about your personality and lose 40 pounds, we're going to give you this role. And at the time I was like, oh my gosh, this is a huge opportunity. So I did. And I basically kind of used this checklist system to do that. And, like I said, long story short, my body started shutting down because I was on diet pills and I hated myself. I became very suicidal. And I realized like all of these checklists in the world didn't matter if I wasn't being myself. So I started to, when I changed back to actually being myself, I got fired. And every single person that had invested in me when I was in this role, when I was cast for the show, never spoke to me again because they had invested in one person and I really was essentially a different one. And, it opened my eyes to all these things. And about a year and a half ago at this point, I went to this business conference called Funnel Hacking Live, and it was amazing. It was so great. I just went to support my sister-in-law who was speaking. And as I sat there, I was still in the frame of mind of like, I don't matter. I'm not meant to be on stage. I'm not meant to be in front of people. People don't like the real me. And if I have to do all those things to be famous or to matter, to be important, then I don't want it. And this man named Russell Brunson, he stood on stage and he said, if you have something that people need, then you have to share it with them. And I sat there and it was, the first time that I was like, okay, yeah, I get it. And then he turned to all these entrepreneurs, in all of these different fields. And he told them that if they had something important, they needed to share it. And the way they needed to share it is they needed to be on stages and on video. And I looked around and I had been reading these people, because I can't get that out of my brain at this point for a whole day. And I had seen that they weren't fantastic in front of people and they had a really hard time communicating their messages with people. And, the combination of those two things of him saying, if you have something that people need, it's your responsibility to share it. And all of you entrepreneurs are basically performers. You need to, be yourselves, the very best version of yourselves in front of people. You need to share your message in these ways that I had been studying my whole life. It snapped something in my brain and I was like, wait a minute. My performance past is not what made me important. It's the way that I thought about things. And it's these checklists. And, I really do think I have something that all of these amazing people around me who have these incredible solutions can use. So I got home and I started my business and, I really channeled all of the checklists that I had built for the last, 20 years into getting audiences to do 3 things and really controlling those audiences to watch people, to trust and engage with them, and then to buy from them. So I've taken every single checklist and every formula that I have. And now I do that with all of my clients and it works and it's amazing and it's so much fun. So that's the long story of charisma hacking.
So think about, I want it, like everybody who's listening here for just a minute to think about what she just said. Obviously, the story that she told was kind of sad, honestly, until you got to the point where it's like, okay, these difficult things have equipped me with a certain piece of knowledge, like a group of knowledge. Yeah. And I'm now being told, both by somebody up there and by something inside of me, that I can't sit on that. That there are other people out there who will live less of a life, less in pursuit of their potential, if I don't share this. And I think everybody that's in this industry probably got in for that reason. They're like, you know what? I either had a bad experience with real estate or I just feel like it's the most safe and important place in the world for everybody, their home. Yeah. And therefore, I'm going to get into this industry and I can help people. And there's countless agents who are in that spot where they legitimately can help people. Yeah. The challenge that they run into is that they can't get people's attention, right? Because they don't maybe have that natural charisma. Yeah. They're camera shy. You hear them state it. Some of it's true. Sometimes that's made up. They're uncomfortable and or they're decent, but they're not getting, the kind of the watch that they want and getting people to engage with them. So you're speaking to the right audience. We've got a group of people here that can really help people.
Yeah.
They're sitting on a talent and a gift that the public needs, and yet they're not able to kind of break free and be the best version of themselves. And it's interesting. I want to kind of divert here for just a minute.
Of course.
I myself tend to be fairly introverted. You get me in certain environments where I'm talking about my passion, aka right here, I get fired up, and I think the best version of me comes out. Like there's some fire here because I'm talking about something that I love and to people that I love. And so I want you to help us get to that point, at least start us down the path, right? Like, how do people start to kind of break out of that mindset of like, that's just not for me. I've got a gift, but I don't know how to get it out there. So I'm just going to stay quiet about it.
Yeah. So the first thing that people have to realize is there's a voice for every audience and an audience for every voice, right? So I had an experience where I charisma hack people 5 days a week on Facebook, and I charisma hack a lot of different awesome people with awesome different personalities. And the reason I do that is to show people that there is not one type of charisma, right? Charisma is literally just the ability to get strangers to trust you and those who know you to become aggressively devoted to you. That is the definition of charisma. With charisma and in charisma hacking, we separate charisma into two different things: charisma styles and charisma levels, right? The charisma style, most of the time, people say to me things like, I'm really introverted, I don't have charisma. And that's just not true, right? When I say there's a voice for every audience, an audience for every voice, by you trying to be somebody else, by you trying to be stereotypically charismatic, you're actually depriving a very specific audience that would be attracted to the real you. You're depriving them of a leader. You're depriving them of a voice. You're depriving them of an agent that they would relate to and want to buy from even more, right? There are so many people who are not attracted to my specific type of charisma. I was charisma hacking this man who has a completely different personality than me. He's a lot more subdued. And my audience, when I broke him down, loved it, right? They're there to watch me. His audience, because he shared it with him, the comments were literally, is she on cocaine? Like they were not about my personality. And it was an actually beautiful experience for me because I looked at this and I was like, oh, they have gathered around his charisma, his personality. He's a lot more quiet. He's a lot more introverted, but that works because he's emotionally accurate with people. Right. So when it comes to being on video, the first thing that you have to realize is that you have to be yourself. And I know that that sounds way too simple, but if you think about it, every single human in the world has somebody who's already obsessed with them. I have created a profession around making people obsessed with other people. That's what I do with every single one of my clients. But you already have somebody in your life who's obsessed with you, whether it's a wife, a brother, a sister, a mom, a dad, right? Whoever, a kid, a spouse, right? Whoever that may be, they are already obsessed with you. And the person that you are when you're with that person, that's the person that we need to get as close to as possible on camera. It's not the definition of one specific type of charisma. It's somebody who somebody else is already obsessed with. And then instead of trying to add things to make you more charismatic, we start taking things away. We start taking away things that come with, social anxiety and things like that. The main reason why people don't get on video is the fear of rejection, the fear of being mocked, right? They don't want people to see them as they really are and to reject them.
I think
it's inevitable.
Time out real quick. I think it's interesting because the story that you told leading up to this was when you tried to get charisma centered around somebody else, someone that they wanted you to be. So folks, if that's what you're getting from this is I got to be somebody else. No, that will cause you to go downward, not upward. What McCall, and I want to highlight what she said right there, which is she helps you peel things away that aren't real, right? She helps you to take things that are keeping you from being your true self so that you can get your important talents and message out to the world.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like statistically, I've seen this with a whole bunch of my clients if you create an audience for a person who doesn't exist or this character that you create, as soon as you become yourself, that audience leaves, right? I saw that in my own life. I've seen it in other clients' lives, right? When they come to me and they're like, listen, I've created this character, more charismatic or not, and audiences have rallied around that person, right? Instead of spending time, effort, traffic, money, building an audience who will stay with you, they build an audience that will not. And then when they make the switch and become their actual selves, because that's the only thing that's sustainable, that audience leaves. Right. So the first thing with actually getting on video, we break charisma into this framework that I call the FACE framework. So F is floor, or the level. Remember, we have styles and we have levels, right? This is basically the competency level of which your audience reacts to you. Then we have, so it's my FACE framework. Imagine being the face of your company. So F is floor, competency level that we have. A is authority, C is compassion, and E is entertainment. Through all of the research that I've done, really for my whole life, but with this business specifically, we have mapped out the things that you have to have in order to fully connect with a human. Now remember, with styles, with charisma styles, that comes in a lot of different forms. Everybody's going to have a different type of authority, a different style of authority, a different style of compassion, a different style of entertainment. Think of the different, TV characters that there are. There's a lot of different funny or entertaining TV characters, but they all have different personalities, right? There's like Jim from The Office versus, Borat, right? They're completely different people, right? But they both can have an equal level of entertainment. We get that through just emotional accuracy. Remember, there's people who are already obsessed with you. We want to recreate those kinds of relationships. So you have to dial into, okay, when I'm with my very favorite person in the world, how do I sound? How do I move? What language do I use? Right? And then when I get on video, what's different, right? Start to create your own checklist and say, okay, when I'm with my very favorite person in the world, what does my voice sound like? If I'm really excited and I'm talking like this, and then I get on video and I'm trying to be very professional and I say, wow, I'm really excited, there's something that's off, right? The one that needs to change is the one that's not emotionally accurate. You're saying you're excited, but you don't sound excited, right? Or you're like, oh my gosh, my dog died. It was the hardest experience of my life. It's like, you don't sound sad, right? You have to make sure that it's emotionally accurate so that you are recreating those relationships, like I said, of people who are already obsessed with you. That is not determined on if you are extroverted or introverted, if you're loud or quiet, if you're intense or calm, right? It's just based on that emotional accuracy. People are craving connection and you have to give it to them.
So going back, because like we're going to do a round two, assuming you agree to this, we're going to have you back. But because we only have about 3 or 4 minutes left, but I want to hear if you could give a couple key steps for people that are like, okay, I like what she's saying. There's somebody inside of me that's true to who I am, but is a better version of myself that's not being out on video.
Yeah.
Number one, you said emotional accuracy. Like, who are you when you're with your favorite person, right? When you're kind of your most best self, what does that look like? Be that. Is there another tip or two that you could share here in just a couple minutes?
Sure.
That would allow somebody who's watching this to like turn this off and go do a video and be different than they've been in the past, better than they've been in the past?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say, is be curious. You just have to find that emotional accuracy. Find who you are when you're authoritative, compassionate, and entertaining, right? Find who you are in those things. What does your voice sound like? What does your body look like? All those kinds of things. And then before you start a video, I have something called the cold versus warm open. Anytime somebody goes to push record, start a video, a lot of times they'll push record and they'll just kind of try to start. They'll try to go, right? When it'll take them, 8 minutes to warm up when they've already lost the audience. They lose anybody who comes, or they'll sit there and be like, I'm going to wait for a couple people to jump on, right? They are not warming up. The way that I say it is, imagine if you were an Olympic sprinter. We just watched the Olympics, right? And if you had a 400 race, and you decided not to warm up because you were nervous, or you feel like, I got this, or like, maybe if I practice, it'll make me worse. I don't understand why people say that, right? When they say, okay, I'm not going to warm up. If you didn't warm up for that race, that first lap of the race would be your warm up. Either you choose your warm up or your warm up is chosen for you, right? Same thing happens with video. If you just push record and go, there's no warm up. There's no emotional gauge or emotional map. You have to gear up as soon as that recording button, is pushed. And then you're flat for the whole beginning of it. Instead, back up 45 seconds before you ever push record and say out loud the type of emotion that you need to portray, the type of emotion you need to feel and you need your audience to feel. Say it out loud. Have some I am statements of like, I'm energetic, or like, I am empowering, or I am sad, or I am empathetic, whatever it may be. Get yourself to an emotionally accurate state before you push record, right? Takes about 45 seconds, then push record so your audience can see the best version of you. It can see the version that's already warmed up, right? Can see the version that is already emotionally engaged with them. So they don't have to stick around for that first 5 to 8 minutes, right? Or even 30 to 40 seconds, which is enough time to lose somebody. They don't have to wait for you to gear up and be emotionally accurate with them. They just get it right from the get-go.
Brilliant. Just simply move the push record button, right? Just adjust where it's coming from.
Totally.
So good. My final question, and again, I feel like I could spend a lot more time with you. And
yeah, no worries.
The final question is this. You're a big thinker. You went from last year, right, attending Funnel Hacking Live to this year. You're going to be speaking on the stage, which could be considered the Super Bowl of entrepreneur events.
Yeah,
right?
I'm excited.
You are a big thinker. What does McCall Jones do to continue to be a big thinker? What does that look like for you?
I think with my feet. My husband tells me that all the time. I am not afraid to take action.
Yeah.
And I honestly, anytime somebody is asking me how to get started or how to move forward or all of that, you just have to act, right? A lot of times people spend too much time learning. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but you have to implement as you go. The only way that I'm able to think bigger is to grasp a concept and to apply it to see if it works. And if it doesn't work, I need to adjust, right? But I'll never know the implementation of it if I don't try it, right? So I try to move as fast as I can just with implementing things that I learn. Honestly, somebody who does that fantastically is Russell Brunson, right? I sent him a training a year ago with 2CCX. It was this high ticket coaching program that he had. And he was doing the video things that I had trained on that day. Like I sent him the training and all of a sudden he was applying these things and I was like, wait a minute, this is crazy, right? But he is so willing to implement, right? And I try to take that as well. Every time I think of something, want to do something, I just implement it immediately. And a lot of times it won't work, which is okay, right? But you can either spend time stewing and planning and overthinking, or you can implement, have it not work and immediately move on, right? It's entrepreneurs who succeed are those who act. So as soon as you hear something, if you're like, okay, this is coming from a reputable source, this is something that I feel could work, try it. And if it doesn't work, move on, adjust, right? It's not the end of the world to fail along the way. That's totally fine. There will be a lot of things that don't work. The only way you can think bigger is to keep moving forward, is to keep thinking, to keep grasping new concepts and finding new things to act on.
Money loves speed. I love it, McCall. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much for pouring into us. I look forward to our next conversation.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, for everybody listening here today, my simple request is this: go think bigger. McCall, thank you for helping us do that today, my friend.
Yeah, thank you so much.